I've come to know these guys through working at the University of Florida. They both have moved on and are finishing the year one as a head coach. And so what I wanted to do is start off by showing a video, because you all have a pulse on the culture, you know what's going on. And this video is with John Mayer. Do you guys know who John Mayer is? Okay, that's good, that's good. Hey, so check this out, and then I'm gonna ask a few questions from it.
Celebrities spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on security and then get on the internet every morning and look at all this stuff online that makes them feel terrible. And it's like, they got in. They got in over the fence, And so if you're really gonna live well, the mind is so important to not have unwanted visitors.
The thing we do with all of our guys, we do is like a bubble chart. And so I ask all of our players when they first get there, give me a list of the people you listen to the most. And I asked one of the freshmen, and he said about 4 or 5 people. Obviously, one was his mom, one was his dad, AAU coach. And I kept telling him, I said, no, that's wrong. You're missing somebody. And I said, you forgot one person. And he said, who? I said, yourself. And when we get to the point where they can overcome that, they usually end up being really good players.
What's the best lesson you've learned doing the bubble chart?
That the best lesson I learned with the bubble chart is that a lot of the people around the student athletes after a game, that's where, emotions are at an all-time high. So you don't want to contact those people after a game because, good or bad, it could get ugly. So the thing is those are the people they're going to listen to the most. So as college coaches, we have them for a few years. It used to be 4 years now, maybe a year. So it's just, with them, it's just getting them to trust you. So sometimes you have to have those conversations with people that they've trusted for 17, 18 years to develop the trust with them.
No doubt. And I think that's what's so hard, because it's hard to discern reality from illusion. And I think that this next clip is going to show that.
Let me ask you a question. It's a question that everyone has been asked at one time or another. What do you want to be when you grow up? For decades, when researchers asked kids this, the answer was often the same. Today, kids in America say they want to be this more than any other occupation on Earth.
Good morning from paradise. I'm wearing a big sweater.
A famous influencer.
Cheers.
It's understandable. Influencers lead a grand life.
This is our first real day in Tulum.
We're at the Victoria's Secret pre-party.
Had a really fun night last night, and then now we came to Hero Beach. This is the new room for the next 3 days.
But is that actual fame? Is that number, that indicator of how many followers you have, how many likes you get, how many people comment on your posts, is that all real?
Good morning, guys. I went to sleep realizing I had 2 million followers last night.
There are over 40 million people who have over 1 million followers on Instagram. Are they all famous? There are over 100 million people who have more than 100,000 followers. Are they famous too? If they are, how can over 140 million people, the equivalent of almost half of the population of the United States, all be considered famous?
What do you think about that?
Goodness gracious. So, yeah, the thing that's scary, I'm looking at that graph, and it says pro athletes. Like, yeah, it's out there. So, quick story. One of our players on our roster this year, a young man who he was a pretty good player for us. He started at the 4 position, and he averaged about 8 points and 3 rebounds. And so I remember him walking into my office, and he says to me, "Hey, coach, I got an announcement for you." And I'm thinking to myself, man, this dude got straight A's. Like, this is going to be the best ever. And he's like, no, I'm going to put my name in the draft. I say, put your name in the draft. And so, for me, you don't know, Jacksonville University is a low major. And so we were really good this year. We had some success. This young man, he pours his heart into what he does, and so I love him to death. But at the same time, it's unrealistic. And so, you know, a couple days later, I come out of my office.
Hey, can we just say that the way he presented it to you, he goes, I'm dropping a graphic.
Oh, yes.
What'd he say?
He says, I'm gonna wait until 12 a.m. tonight, and I'm gonna drop a graphic. And I'm thinking to myself, who's looking at this graphic? Like, okay. And so it's hilarious. And so I come in my office probably 2 days later. He's out there working out, and I see this gentleman I've never recognized before. And I walk up to him and I say, you know, who are you? And he says to me, I'm a O-size athletic trainer. And I said, okay, cool. He says, I'm getting ready for the NBA. And so I say, you know, give me some of your credentials. Who are you? He says, well, I'm a parole officer in Texas. And I say, okay. So how many clients do you have? You know, maybe you're doing both. And he says to me, well, Osai's my first client. And so I'm thinking to myself, so this is an experiment. Like we're trying something out here, both parties. And so it shows me as a coach, you know, not just him, but the rest of the guys on our roster, they live in this false reality. And it's our job as coaches and our staff to make sure that these guys understand that there's a reality that exists, that you can be successful, but it's not just on social media and what you see every day.
But you're not undressing it in that moment. You're letting it play out a little bit.
Yes, I think you have to let it play out in order for them to ultimately fail and see, you know, what reality is. And so probably, I think it was last week, he had the opportunity to remove his name from the NBA draft and remove his name. And so I asked him, I say, so how'd it go? How many NBA teams reached out to you? He puts his head down. He said, none, coach. He said, I didn't get one call. I said, well, I guess you got to work harder, huh? He's like, yeah, I got to get to the court. I said, no, work hard in the classroom. Not on the court, hard in the classroom. Get your degree, and then you'll have job opportunities. And so to be able to teach him through that lesson is the most valuable lesson for us.
And before I throw it over to you, how do you have the restraint?
You know what? In that moment, I want to start laughing, but I can't laugh at the young man because I don't want to ultimately hurt his feelings. But I know, you know, life is hard, and life ultimately it will hurt your feelings if you don't face reality head on. And so, being able to kind of teach him through his own actions and through his own failures is the best way for me to internalize and be able to help him. And ultimately, I know in that moment, you know, it's not likely he's going to get drafted, but I need to at least let him have that experience in order to know going forward how to make him a better person and a better man.
That's beautiful, man. Your thoughts?
I think if you listen, like we listen to our student athletes, I think their social media and what they put on social media will tell you a lot about what they're going through. So for example, you know, with our guys, when you see them post old high school videos or, you know, when they were doing well, you know they're going through something. So no, seriously. So every time we have one of our guys post old highlights, I have my staff put in our group thread, so-and-so, are you okay? Because obviously they're seeking something. So then it got to a point where one of my assistants played at Tulsa, and he posted one of his old college videos. So then the guy said, hey, Coach Peter, you okay? So I think you got to use social media, like, because they're going to be on it regardless. But you use it for information about what they're going through and what they see, and this is what they see. And this is, you know, something that we have to try to combat, like what is real and what's fake.
And I think that this next clip's going to show you how fake it can be, but also it can cue us on how we can help them discern realities.
All right, should we do some cucumbers?
Oh, perfect.
Online, there are thousands of tutorials explaining how to pretend that you're on an elaborate vacation when you're really just in your bedroom. Or, as this influencer pulled off,
I went on a luxury dream vacation to Bali. Only problem is, I was actually at IKEA.
Yeah, that's a lot. But I'll say this: our guys, you see what you see on social media, and they don't truly understand it. And for our staff and our program, what we try to do is give them life lessons. We try to bring them in, and I use ourselves. Darris and I were talking about it last night. Jeremy Foley, he changed our life at 26, 27 years old. Being able to become an assistant coach at such a young age at the University of Florida, we talked about with our guys, hey, I asked them, how much do you think my salary was when I was at that age? And they had no idea. They said, Coach, probably, $42,000 or whatever it may have been. And I said to them, well, I made six figures at 26, 27 years old. But the struggle is when I first started, I was making $16,000 and I was living at the back of my car. And so they only thing that they focus on is now. They don't see where you came from. And so to be able to show those real life experiences and to be able to.
Because you have people in.
Yes.
You want to share that?
So I have people.
You have all these people come in and then you ask them to share their salaries because they have such a skewed reality of what is possible.
We do. So we had this Wednesday influential speakers who come in, and whether they're athletes or whoever they may be, but the most recent speaker we had, he was a contractor and he did 10 years in prison. And so he made some mistakes. He graduated from the University of Florida, and he came in and he spoke to our guys just about being able to change your life and being able to necessarily flip the narrative of what people may think you are or your past mistakes. And so being able to see where you start is not indicative of where you're going. And so to be able to continue just to give those real life experiences, those real life lessons, that's what we're trying to do to try to negate these type of experiences.
Well, and I'm going to throw it to you because I think that what happens is you'll reset them. So Wednesday, it's like, wow. But then Thursday, they're back, right? And then coaches get so frustrated. But really, that is the job of the coach, is to recalibrate them until they can start to do it on their own. Why do you think coaches don't look at it that way?
I'm not sure why coaches don't look at it that way. I think, and we talked about it earlier, I don't think coaches ask enough questions to understand how to attack a situation. So for us, like when we're dealing with social media, you see some people with 30,000 followers and you may ask one of your student athletes, are these real followers or did you pay for these followers? Because you can pay for followers now. A lot of people didn't know that. I didn't know that till we had a guy at Florida that was doing that. But that tells you what is important to them. And so then you can educate them on what should really be important, kind of like, you're showing Greek Freak video. Those are things that's really important. So like I said again, like, a lot of people say, I'm staying away from social media, but you can learn a lot from your athletes or from your students through their social media.
And Darris, I just want your immediate reaction to this.
Do we have the toilet seat?
They fake free upgrades to first class or trips on private jets. And all you really need to do that is a $12 toilet seat.
like it's funny, I understand it, but the crazy part about these influencers is they're getting paid off of it. So, that's why she's doing it, to try to get paid off of it. But at the end of the day, like, this is what we always see, and then we compare ourselves to what is going on or what we think is going on. And that's an issue within itself, is just comparing yourself to everybody else's life and what looks great. And I always joke with my guys, I'm like, when you put your highlight video, let's put some bloopers in there too and see how people respond.
I think Darris is right. You see this, and it's like our guys, the player I spoke on, he's seen multiple players in college basketball drop a graphic and seeing how many likes and how many people have made comments underneath their pictures. And so he wants that same gratification and to be able to kind of live that lifestyle, even though it may not necessarily be the same lifestyle.
And it's so interesting because you build the following and then you have a public negative moment, and then they don't want it anymore. So you spend all these years getting this affirmation, and the same level the praise affects you, the criticism affects you. How do you think about that?
I think it's hard to handle both. We had, some guys at Florida when, they were in 8th grade, they were already known. And I go back to, when I was growing up and playing, a lot of the guys that you played against, you didn't know who they were before you played them. But now, if you go play an AAU game, all of these guys, they know each other before they play because of these platforms that they have. And I tell a story all the time. I was in North Carolina and I was playing against a guy and he came down the court and he hit a three from almost half court. And I was like, okay, so I need to get a little closer to him. So the next possession, he comes down and he does a double crossover and gets to the rim. And I asked some of my teammates, I said, who is this guy? And they said, that's Chris Paul, he's going to Wake Forest. And so that would never happen in this generation because everybody knows each other and everybody has access to each other before you play.
It's funny you say that. I actually had a gentleman that was on our roster this year. He was the #1 eighth grader in the country. And I was talking to Scotty Lewis, a guy who played for us at Florida.
Think about what you just said, though.
I know. That's why it helps seek it. It explains the young man's attitude as well. And so he's on his, it gave me perspective. And so it's a learning lesson for me. He's on his third school, which makes sense. But, he was the #1 player in the 8th grade. And he's been the same size since the 8th grade. He hasn't grown. He has like a size 14, 15 shoe, and he's 6 foot. And the rest of his siblings have been extremely successful. And they played at a very high level, both his older siblings. And so it's funny because I'm talking to Scotty Lewis, a guy that played for us in Florida. And I said, hey, I'm going through my roster. He says, hey, Tommy Broner, I remember that guy. He was ranked ahead of me. And I'm thinking to myself, you have one guy who started beneath him, who's now in the NBA, and the other guy who was at the very top is playing for me on, his way to another school. And so it shows you how life can change with the flip of a switch.
And how skewed does it make one's perspective to be socialized in a ranking system that early?
I think, it gave me a lot, like I said, perspective of his attitude and how he was and how he carried himself. He had a chip on his shoulder, which at times it made him really good. But at the same time, it made him very uncoachable. He thought he had all the answers. He thought that, basically that life had robbed him. And, when you have that much pressure, that much praise at such a young age, it can really mess with your mental, as we spoke on in the beginning.
And I want to just ask the audience real quick, raise your hand if you've done a social media cleanse before. All right. Go ahead and lower them. Raise your hand if you felt unhealthier when you were on the cleanse. Raise your hand if you got back on social media. If you do that with athletes, it's the same thing. So you just watched that. How do you think about it?
I don't think they're going to get off. I mean, they will get off, but something's going to draw them right back into it. So instead of fighting it, I know some older coaches may say, I'll get off social media during the season. Instead of fighting it, we try to figure out creative ways to build habits through it. So we talked about it the other day. And sometimes you want your players to do the dirty work stuff, or, make the extra pass and all of that stuff. So on our social media, that's what our team social media, that's what we show. So hopefully, that builds the right habits instead of, you showing isolation, the guy goes in there and dunks. Now everybody's thinking that's how I get attention through social media. So instead of just saying get off of it, we try to coach them through social media as well.
Closing thoughts?
Yeah, we have to educate our guys through social media. And when I say that, you can say something to them in practice and they might not necessarily hear you or believe you, especially with you being such a young coach. And so I found it helpful, okay, if I want to teach these guys how hard you have to work, I'll post a previous video of one of the guys that I've coached. And it's funny that, 2 or 3 days later when you walk in the gym, you have 4 guys doing the exact same thing that you just posted. And I tell our staff, I'm like, I told you guys, we got to continuously pour into this social media. And so just trying to use it as a tool to be able to help those guys, because I don't think they'll ever get off of it, ever. And so we have to use it to our benefit to be able to benefit them in life.
And I think the coolest thing about these guys, 2 things as we let them go, is one, I didn't know which one of y'all made more money at Florida? And then I realized you guys were paid the exact same. And it's just equal, and there's no my guy, your guy. You guys were just attacking it as a partnership. It was one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. And with these guys, you have the ability to either accept or resist anything. And these guys accept whatever's in front of them and find a way to move it towards what they're trying to work towards. It's amazing. Let's give it up for them.